Welcome, friends, to Design Bay Area podcast, hosted and produced by CL Media, where consciousness meets creativity and stories come to life. Let's get to it. Welcome back. We are sitting here with James Hurst, who is a creative director, writer, and educator, who is known well for his transformational approach to design and branding, which is what I want to talk about, or anything else that you want to discuss. But let's get started with just sort of an intro question. I know you've had some big job with some of the tech firms, Google, Pinterest, and Tinder. Yeah, where I believe it was sort of, you led sort of the way that we interact with digital platforms is sort of what I was reading about a little bit. And in your career now, how do you feel like that has significantly influenced your ideas around designing for, what's the name of your book again?
Use design to design change.
Use design to design change. Has that affected sort of your move into that direction?
I actually think that work informed the book rather than the other way around. It's a really simple premise. I'm a very basic human. How do you use your digital experience to build your brand rather than building a brand to sell your digital experience? So I'm always a fan of using the moments or contact points people have with a company to build something meaningful, to create a moment of delight, to create a moment that people enjoy themselves. And if you can bring that levity into that experience, I think that's actually brand building, not just making the advert to tell people about the product.
So was that something that you experienced while you were working for these big firms as well? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the sort of the drumbeat of lots of really progressive design teams is how do you think about all of those, I'm old enough and ugly enough to have gone through all the experience of seeing best practice and we should do this thing because it's worked in all these other places. Those sorts of conversations have become a bit of an echo chamber for designers. Really progressive design teams understand you've got to get out of that echo chamber. You've got to think, well, listen, that might be best practice, but people have seen that thing everywhere else. So let's think about the thing that's going to be unique or germane here, or the thing that's going to be really interesting with what we're designing right over here. And I think that's definitely part of the DNA of all of those teams.
And so do you feel like when you are sort of trying to capture values of a company or a brand, how do you do that with your design?
Values are kind of trying to get a company to understand the role of brand is one of the hardest things in the world. I would say that because that's my thing. Obviously, there are harder things. Doctors, I see them. Parenting, I see them. But I think building a brand, okay, maybe it's not one of the hardest things. It's an ambiguous process. And the ambiguity is that people think, oh, we're going to talk about our brand because we need to make a visual thing. We need to produce something. We need it to look professional, would be where they're starting from. And then someone like me walks in the room and I say, we need to make sure this tells a story of our entire company and our being, and we're thinking about how we're going to do everything as a result of our brand. That journey of the role of the brand and what a brand should be doing is a really difficult journey to have, and it's up to anyone working in brand land, I think, to educate people about the role of brand as the operating system for a business, not just the ability to sort of show how a business shows up when it's out in the world for whatever reason.
Can you give an example of somebody or a business that you've worked with where you've really sort of transformed their brand into making a difference in how it's viewed? Or
all of the work, anything I've touched,
everything,
it's all genius.
All of it, it's genius.
No, of course, like for, I think for every 100 jobs I do, there's probably one or two that you can really hold up and say, this has worked out exactly to plan. Often you're working with people. People have many foibles, they go in different directions, so you're always having to sort of evolve that thinking. But there are lots of projects I'm really proud of. A great one is probably a food delivery company in England called Deliveroo. I helped shape what the role, this is going back maybe 10 years, maybe a bit longer, helped shape what food delivered to your house should feel like, what you should expect. Back then, people expected it to be cheap takeaway food, and they wanted to hold on to, I guess for American folk, their sort of nearest neighbor in brandland here would probably be caviar. They sort of pride themselves on being a little bit more taste forward with the choices of the restaurants they work with and the quality that they can deliver. Had to educate the markets that they're in. They're in every market apart from America. So educate consumers that they could get good food delivered. Then educate restaurateurs that there was a trusted place that could represent their brand and could represent the hard work they've put into making their dish, and then educate all the riders who had to be the sort of the first person that you'd meet when you open the door and you get given the food. How do you educate the riders to be a really good custodian or representative or advocate of that brand or that thinking? And the reason I love that work is it was just so ambiguous. There were so many unknowns in that entire process, and we just had to treat it as a real human challenge. How do you get human beings to really love what they do? And I think we've been really successful in that.
That's a lot of work behind that, for sure.
Thankfully, there are lots and lots of really great people that I've got to work with, and it wasn't just me.
So I think you're teaching now, or you have been, and I'd like to talk about this idea of aesthetic intelligence versus the AI that we all sort of know. And can you give me a little bit of background on that?
Yeah, so I teach a course, how to use artificial intelligence to build aesthetic intelligence. I worked at Pinterest, and someone introduced me to a thing called fuzzy logic, and I got so excited about it. It's when you're going to any search engine, you type in green and it shows you grass instead of green things. It's because there's a bit of fuzzy logic in the mix that knows and can intuit, oh, this person is probably looking for grass based on whatever else is in your history of your relationship with that application. I got excited about fuzzy logic, so I wanted to create a talking book. I spent about a year with an engineer trying to create a talking book, and I wanted that talking book to be a way of people asking and answering really dumb questions to get to smart answers about how to build a brand. And I thought it would be fantastic. After about a year, and quite a lot of money, it was terrible and it didn't work. Nobody could use it. By then I was working at Google, and someone showed me a very early iteration of an AI system, and I immediately thought, that's the thing I've been trying to build. And I got so excited about the process of using this tool to create a talking book, to create this sort of back and forth conversation and have it as a real sparring partner. So from a very early, in these days, early AI age, which feels like every year is probably like 10 years, it feels like, I got to play with these tools, see how these tools could work, see where they would fail, see what wouldn't work, where they wouldn't be a good sparring partner. And off the back of that, end up building a few funny AI products. Built one product that got really, really popular for about 10 minutes before OpenAI launched ChatGPT, and then, like many things, it became much less popular. But I got to see and understand the ways that as a creative person you could use AI as a real tool in your process and in the way that you'd use some work. And I think because of that, I don't know, that relationship I'd built with it and a very organic way of learning about how it would work, crew asked whether or not I'd be interested in teaching other creative people how to do it. I think we're on the 3rd cohort now, and it's exciting, it's amazing teaching something as you're learning about it as well, because every time we've taught the course, it changes through the course of the course, and it forces me to learn about the tools, it forces me to stay interested in it, stay curious, stay hungry. And I think it's one of the most rewarding things to get to a place where you can sort of I'm really transparent with the students who are on the course. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be as much a student as they are, but I'll help sort of hold the torch whilst we learn about this stuff as we move through it. And I've left every single one of the cohorts much smarter about how these tools work, where they don't work, how we should think about them. So I think that it's a really powerful tool, and we should all learn how to hold on to it, because that's going to allow us all to do more stuff as a result.
And it's a big conversation right now, obviously. So we were talking a little bit earlier about sort of exercising your own creativity and if AI is actually influencing that sort of muscle being worked. But it sounds like you're kind of on the other side where you're like, no, we're actually exercising that muscle in a different way, and AI is really benefiting the design world.
Yeah, I think I'm not blind to some of the issues with AI. There are big, massive questions about the ethics of it, about the energy of it, about the role that it plays in people's lives, in your process. In my opinion, there's deductive thinking and inductive thinking in any sort of creative process. Deductive thinking is when we ask all the questions to learn what's the baseline for something, what does the market expect, what do the competitors do. That's using deductive thinking to deduce, oh, this is what people expect when they're engaging with this brand. Inductive thinking is when a human being says, if that's what everyone else is doing, we should do this thing over here. And it's those inductive thoughts that I think are sacred in creativity. AI is a big deductive machine. It's really good at giving you the deductive landscape really, really quickly. I use it as a tool to get really smart about the deductive stuff really, really quickly. And then I use human ingenuity and craft to do inductive thinking. I'm a real believer that that's where the magic happens. And I think that's going to be the role of using AI as a tool. The danger is that now people are trying to use AI to do the inductive bit. They might use different words for it, but I think that's what they're trying to do. And I don't think that's the right way to use it. I think you'll end up still just chewing and creating lots of sort of deductive or facsimiles of stuff that's already happened before.
I would imagine that's pretty inspiring for your students to hear.
I'm really touched, but I don't just do it for the ego, but it is a real ego boost at the end of the session, seeing how much confidence people have and the success stories that they then have in the presentations they do, and then also the ability for them to push further, go wider, play bigger as a result of knowing how to use these tools and how these tools help them be better at their job.
Great. Well, I appreciate the conversation. I think your business now is Punkworks, is that correct?
No, it's Zag.
Zag, okay, so Punkworks was before?
Punkworks was a sort of a crazy initiative to try to make sense of an idea that I had where the triple bottom line, people, planet, profit, which we use to audit what a business has done, could you use that to give businesses tools to think about what they're going to do?
Yeah.
So we created a whole set of tools that people could use to launch something, adapt something, and scale something. Then I would host workshops mainly down at the Ferry Building in San Francisco. And people would come and we'd help equip them with all the tools they needed to get their idea off the ground and see how they could use those tools to support themselves through those inflection points of the business. But I have recently joined a company called Zag in England who have got a very interesting, different way of thinking about the role of creativity and what creativity means.
Wonderful. Well, I hope that goes well for you and all the best to you. I hear you're moving to England, back to the homeland, so I hope that's a good move for you. And we look forward to seeing you back in the States again and all the wonderful work that you're doing in the future.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers.